Hello and welcome to Extra Innings. I am Van Noland alongside Owen Noland. It has been a while since we've done a show. We've been very busy this summer. We do apologize for that. But we are back and we have a lot of baseball news to get to. And not a lot of minor league news, although we do have a little bit. Owen, what minor league news do you have for us?
Yes, the All-Star break is upon us in the minor leagues for all the full season leagues, AAA, AA, Single A. Their All-Star break is this week, so no games going on at those levels. There is, however, some All-Star game news to talk about, and none other than Tim Tebow, who will be making his All-Star game debut at AA. He's had a good year for the Binghamton Roval Ponies, hitting over 260. Actually, in the month of June, he hit over 300. So Tim Tebow may be starting to figure it out, and a call-up to AAA could be in his near future. Speaking of a call-up to AAA, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the son of Hall of Famer Vladimir Guerrero, has been tearing up AA pitching before he got hurt. He's been out since early June or middle of June with an injury, and the Blue Jays announced today that when he returns, it will not be at AA. It will be at AAA, so the number one overall prospect in the majors, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., will be moving up to AAA to begin the second half of the season when he returns from injury. He would have been a AA All-Star, but like I said, he's been injured, hitting well over 400, which is crazy, before he got injured, and was tearing up every level of the minor leagues that he'd previously been at, including AA. He'll make his next stop at AAA, one stop short of the major leagues. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. could get called up this year, and maybe Tim Tebow for that matter, but Vladimir Guerrero Jr. nonetheless had a great first half before the injury, has hit well wherever he's gone, and I'm sure will continue to do so when he moves up to AAA. Again, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. The future is right there for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's all the minor league news. Like I said, they're on All-Star break this week, so no games, no prospect roundup to talk to you guys about. That'll be back next week. And speaking of All-Star games, the All-Star game rosters in the major leagues were announced. Van has the full rundown on that.
Yes. We are going to start by introducing you guys to the rosters. If you either did not watch the selection show on ESPN on Sunday afternoon, just didn't have time for whatever reason, we will go through the All-Star starters, and then we'll just discuss the rosters and discuss the snubs, because there are always a few, and to get to the reserves as well. Starting in the American League, at first base, Jose Abreu of the White Sox was voted in by the fans. One of the brightest spots for the Chicago White Sox, who have struggled for much of the first half. He was able to earn the fan vote. The NL first baseman was Atlanta Braves first baseman Freddie Freeman. He had over 4 million total votes. He will be making his third All-Star Game appearance. At second base for the American League, no real surprise here. None other than the Astros second baseman Jose Altuve. Another great year, hitting .339 so far. He was the leading vote getter in all of baseball with more than 4,800,000 votes. Javier Baez will be playing second base for the National League. He was able to beat Ozzie Albies, who had led the majority of the race. Javier Baez took over late, and he will get to start for the Chicago Cubs. As a representative of the Chicago Cubs, I should say. At third base, Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Indians will play for the American League side. And Nolan Arenado, arguably one of the best third basemen in baseball, of the Colorado Rockies, will make his fourth straight All-Star appearance, his second consecutive start. At shortstop, a familiar face to the All-Star game, but a new position for the American League. It's Manny Machado at shortstop, previously a third baseman until he was converted to shortstop this year for the Baltimore Orioles. And in the National League, it's Brandon Crawford of the San Francisco Giants. Crawford will be making his second All-Star appearance. In the outfield, now they're not voted in by left field, center field, right field. They're just all outfielders are grouped into one. The American League representatives are Mookie Betts from the Boston Red Sox, Mike Trout from the Los Angeles Angels, and Aaron Judge from the New York Yankees. No real surprises there. There were, however, some surprises in the National League. All three in their own unique way are surprises, I would argue. Nick Markakis of the Atlanta Braves and Matt Kemp of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Both big reasons to their team's success early in the year. And both have had great seasons despite being on sort of the downward slope of their career. Both over 30, Nick Markakis actually making his first All-Star appearance, and Matt Kemp's first since 2011. Actually, since 2012 for Matt Kemp. Both the veterans having outstanding seasons, and if I would have said to you at the beginning of the year that Matt Kemp and Nick Markakis would be starting the All-Star game, and they would deserve to be starting the All-Star game, what would you say to me?
I would have said you're crazy, and you've probably never watched baseball in your life. I would have placed better odds on Matt Kemp being released by the All-Star break than him starting the All-Star game for the Dodgers. But I think everybody would have.
Yes, a lot of people thought that when the Dodgers acquired Matt Kemp, they would just release him.
Well, they're glad they didn't now.
Yes, very glad they didn't. And then the third outfielder is Bryce Harper. Only hitting .220 this year. Not having a very Bryce Harper year at all, but the fans, I guess, recognize the name and say, oh, he must be pretty good. Well, kind of just got in because of his name. Am I wrong, Owen?
No, you're not wrong at all. It shows sort of the popularity contest and maybe the downside to fan voting. And I think it's great that fans get a say and they get to vote. But I think maybe the commissioner office or the players need to step in, maybe. And I get that it's in D.C., so Harper's kind of like the ambassador for the game, being the star player on the Nationals. But he's not having an all-star type year and certainly not deserving of starting an all-star game this year. And that doesn't take anything away from Bryce Harper. I mean, it kind of does, but he's still a good player. He's put up good numbers in his young career, and people forget he's been in the big leagues. This is his 6th year now, and he's only 25. So he just didn't have a great first half this year, and honestly didn't deserve to be starting the NL All-Star game in the outfield in the All-Star game. I can't speak right now.
Yeah. And the last position voted on by the fans is the catcher. Wilson Ramos of the Rays and Wilson Contreras of the Cubs. Wilson Ramos in the AL, of course, on the Rays, and Contreras, of course, on the Cubs in the NL.
What are the odds both their catchers are named Wilson?
Not
to start the All-Star game.
Yeah, really low, considering that since 2014 in the National League, nobody with the name other than Buster had started.
That's a pretty big.
Yes, Wilson Contreras beat out Buster Posey for the catching spot. It'll be the first time in a while that Buster Posey will not start the All-Star game. And in the American League, it's worth mentioning as well that it'll be the first time in, not as long as Buster Posey, I think 3 years, that Wilson Ramos, or that Salvador Perez will not be starting, and Wilson Ramos will be starting in his place. So Wilson Ramos, definitely one of the better hitting catchers in all baseball, definitely very deserving of the start. He's hitting .289, which is really good. You can get that sort of production out of your catcher.
Yes, definitely one of the best offensive catchers in the game. So he definitely deserved to start. Maybe Salvador Perez's defense is still better, but the offensive year that Ramos had, and even when he was in Washington, Wilson Ramos was always a very good hitting catcher. And now finally gets to start the All-Star game. Much deserved of. They call him the Buffalo, I think.
Yes. And the last position voted on by the fans is just in the American League. The designated hitter, J.D. Martinez, was voted as the starter. J.D. Martinez, of course, having a great year with the Boston Red Sox. Already 27 homers and 74 RBIs. Not to mention his .329 batting average. He has a real shot at winning the Triple Crown. I believe we talked about this.
Yes, I think we have talked about this before, but J.D. Martinez having a great first half.
Yes, and I'm going to go through the pitchers just really quickly, and then for the pitchers, we're going to say our prediction on who starts, because, of course, the manager gets the final say in who starts the All-Star game and what pitchers are selected even to the team. So, let's start in the American League. Trevor Bauer of the Cleveland Indians is a first-time All-Star. Well, he will be a first-time All-Star. Jose Barrios of the Minnesota Twins. Garrett Cole of the Houston Astros. Aroldis Chapman of the New York Yankees. Edwin Diaz of the Seattle Mariners. J.A. Happ of the Toronto Blue Jays. Joe Jimenez of the Detroit Tigers. Craig Kimbrell of the Boston Red Sox. Corey Kluber of the Cleveland Indians. Chris Sale of the Red Sox. Luis Severino of the Yankees. Blake Trinan of the Oakland Athletics. And then Justin Verlander, who is scheduled to pitch on Sunday, was named to the All-Star team, but is already listed as inactive. And actually, who's his replacement? Garrett Cole?
I think Garrett Cole
will replace...
Or no, Trevor Bauer.
You're right. Trevor Bauer is the replacement for Justin Verlander because A.J. Hinch, who is the manager of the American League team, already has said that Verlander will start on Sunday, therefore making him ineligible to pitch in the All-Star game on Tuesday. So, given that list of American League pitchers, Owen, who, if you're in A.J. Hinch's shoes, who would you have start the game?
I don't think you can go wrong with a lot of pitchers on this list because obviously they're all-stars for a reason. They're very good at what they do. But I would go with Chris Sale would this be the second year or third year in a row? I think third year in a row that Chris Sale would start an All-Star game. He's, again, having a Cy Young caliber year for the Red Sox. He's started the All-Star game before, so maybe experience plays a slight bit of factor into it. I don't know how much thought they put into that. But I don't think you can go wrong with Chris Sale starting an All-Star game ever.
Okay, I am going to disagree with you. I would start Corey Kluber of the Cleveland Indians for the mere fact of the strikeout, an 8.2 strikeout to walk ratio. At one point, he had well over 50 strikeouts and had not walked a batter. And he has a 2.49 ERA. So I would go with Cleveland Indians pitcher Corey Kluber. But I don't think you could really go wrong with Chris Sale either. Both valuable options.
Yes, definitely. Like I mentioned, they're all-stars for a reason. They're pretty good at this pitching.
Yes. Now we will move on to the National League pitchers. Oh, and I will let you unveil the not unveil the National League pitchers, but just announce them to the audience.
First, there's Patrick Corbin from the Arizona Diamondbacks, his second appearance in an All-Star game. He made it back in 2014. Then the Mets' Jacob deGrom, who has the lowest ERA in the major leagues this year. Sean Doolittle from the Nationals, who actually is injured and will not be participating. Mike Foltynewicz from the Atlanta Braves. Let's see. What does the star mean next to the team name?
I have not figured that out yet. I initially thought it was first-time All-Star, and then I deemed that to be inaccurate. But.
Next is Josh Hader, one of the most dominant relief pitchers in all of baseball this year for the Milwaukee Brewers. Brad Hand, the lone representative from the San Diego Padres. Kenley Jansen from the Dodgers. John Lester from the Cubs. Miles Mikolas, who's quietly having a very good year for the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't think we give the Cardinals pitching staff enough credit, but Miles Mikolas has been one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. He has a 2.63 ERA, 150 ERA plus in 17 starts. Aaron Nola of the Phillies, a first-time All-Star, surprisingly the only representative from a first-place Phillies team. And then Max Scherzer. He started the All-Star game last year for the National League. He could do it again this year. He's been just as dominant. By year's end, he could get his fourth career Cy Young. He's been one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball for a while. Who do you think out of that group? Actually, I'm forgetting people. Felipe Vasquez of the Pittsburgh Pirates, the last pitcher on the NL roster. He's the lone representative from the Pittsburgh Pirates. So who of that group, Van, would you pick to start the All-Star game?
For me, I think the NL is has a little more competition, but I think the true ace of, I guess, that supposed pitching staff is a little more clear-cut. I would start Max Scherzer, and I think it's easier for two reasons. The game's in Washington, D.C. He'll have his home crowd behind him. That's who the home crowd will want to see. So I think that's one reason why you give him the ball to start the game. And the second reason is he's just proven to be so dominant. The All-Star game last year in Miami, when he got his inning of work, the ferociousness with which he threw the ball every single time, he had the mentality of a closer, and he was starting the baseball game for the Washington Nationals. Well, representing the Washington Nationals for the NL All-Stars. But he pitched every pitch as hard as he could, and I think he does that a lot in games, but in a game when you have to pitch 7 innings, you get fatigued easier. When you know you only have 1 inning to pitch, you have a little bit of a different mindset to it. And I think that's just really entertaining to watch from a viewer standpoint.
Yes. I think it's going to be Max Scherzer as well because it's in his home park in Washington. But if I had to pick, I don't see why you wouldn't go with Aaron Nola. I think Dave Roberts is going to go with Max Scherzer because he's the hometown pitcher. But Aaron Nola, I think, deserves to start the All-Star game. He's got a 2.41 ERA, and he's 11-2. A breakout year for the Phillies right-handed pitcher, Aaron Nola. He has become the ace of the Phillies staff and a big reason why they're currently sit atop the NL East and are battling for a playoff spot with the Braves. And I guess Nationals too. So Aaron Nola, Max Scherzer, you can't go wrong with either one. I think Max Scherzer, though, is the one that gets the start, even though I'd like to see Aaron Nola get the start, even though I think he will in his career. He's going to be a star in this league for a long time. and he could start an All-Star game maybe as soon as next year.
Yes. We will not go through the rest of the reserves. There are quite a few of them. But we will just now talk about some of the snubs of the All-Star game. Owen, give me a few guys you thought were snubbed from either the AL or the NL All-Star team.
I think the biggest snub, without a doubt, has to be Blake Snell, starting pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays. He has a AL leading. He's first in the AL in ERA, third in wins, third in quality starts, top 5 in almost every meaningful pitching category there is, and he wasn't an All-Star. If that isn't the most mind-boggling thing you've ever heard, then I don't know what is. Blake Snell, lowest ERA in the American League, second lowest in all of baseball, is not an All-Star. Why not? I want somebody to explain that to me, because you can't. It's inexplainable.
Yes, I'm yet to hear someone come up with a logical reason as to why Blake Snell has been left off the All-Star team. I think with the conversation of snubs, I think it's a lot easier to bring up pitchers on the list because there are hitters that can get in because of the final vote. All hitters are on the final vote list. Is that just this year or is that every year? Because I can't think of it.
I can think of pitchers in the past that have been on the final vote list. Steve Delabar was a relief pitcher for the Blue Jays a couple years back. He was a pitcher on the final vote list.
Okay.
But maybe this year they've switched it to only position players. Because if you think about pitchers, like, there's a good chance Blake Snell will still be an All-Star because of guys that maybe start or pitch on Sunday, then their managers don't want them to participate in the All-Star game, so they end up inevitably adding more pitchers to the roster.
Yeah.
So I think there's no ways Blake Snell won't be in Washington, D.C. next week. I hope he doesn't have other plans. Because as soon as you hear of an American League pitcher that can't pitch, Snell better be the first guy that A.J. Hinch calls to join the American League All-Star team.
Yes, I think without a doubt that would be the right move to make if you're A.J. Hinch. I think one of the bigger snubs I saw, one of the first ones I realized was Jesus Aguilar of the Milwaukee Brewers. They were going through the list of players, and they had like Lorenzo Cain, Christian Yelich on the list, and I was like, oh, all right, where's Jesus Aguilar? And then they got through the whole list. Jesus Aguilar wasn't there, and Cain and Yelich are his teammates. And Aguilar has been more productive for the Brewers. He's been more meaningful to the Brewers. He's put up better numbers than guys like Cain and Yelich. And yet, he was left off the initial team. Now he is part of the final vote. And he was actually leading the final vote. So if he ends up winning the final vote, you cannot actually, I guess, say that he got really snubbed. But at least being left off the initial roster was kind of a shock for me. And then the other one is Max Muncy of the Los Angeles Dodgers having a career year, a breakout season, the former Oakland A.
I was honestly surprised that he wasn't leading the final vote when the first results came out earlier today. Because he's gotten a lot more attention than Aguilar has this year. So I think people outside of outside of the Milwaukee, think that Max Muncy is maybe more deserving than Aguilar, and I'm not going to argue which one is more deserving. So I thought, being from a bigger market, he gets more national media attention, play a lot of primetime games. It's probably going to be Muncy that wins the final vote in the National League. But no, it's Aguilar that's winning the vote. And I think that's good to see that fans put some time into looking at it and aren't just going to vote for the guy who they've seen on TV the most. Because the Brewers don't play a lot of Sunday Night Baseball or primetime games that are nationally televised. So people outside of Milwaukee don't get a chance to see him. And Aguilar has been, like Vann said, probably one of the most valuable players on the Brewers, arguably more valuable than their All-Stars Lorenzo Cain and Christian Yelich. So good for Aguilar, like you said. He hopefully won't be considered a snub if he wins the final vote.
Yes. Do you have any other snubs?
Adam Ottavino.
Would you like to talk about this?
How a Rockies pitcher with a sub-2 ERA is not an all-star is absurd to me. People want to penalize Larry Walker, Todd Helton, Matt Holliday, Carlos Gonzalez, Troy Tulowitzki, Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon, DJ LeMahieu, yada, 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 for being hitters at Coors Field, but they don't want to give the same credit to pitchers who pitch at Coors Field. And another thing that's worth bringing up in this conversation is electronic strike zones. There was a game against San Francisco. Adam Ottavino, there's a 3-2 count. The bases were loaded. He threw what appeared to be a strike, but the umpire called it a ball, walking in the winning run. Of course, now Adam Ottavino's ERA is a little higher than it should be because we don't have electronic strike zones. The Rockies have one more loss. And now maybe the Giants win that game anyway. Maybe they do, but it wouldn't be Adam Ottavino's fault. Ottavino would have gotten out of that jam with a strikeout. It should have been a strikeout. The game should have been tied at 1. Ottavino's ERA should have been lower. People look at the ERA, it's a little bit lower, and maybe they vote him into the All-Star game.
Well, people don't. Players.
And managers. And then that brings up the other point of what happens when Ottavino reaches free agency. Why in the world would he want to stay in Colorado when he doesn't get credit for an amazing first half? There's no incentive for him or Nolan Arenado or Trevor Story or any of those guys to stay in Colorado or for any big-name free agent to sign in Colorado if they're not going to be rewarded for playing here. And I think you run into that with small-market teams. Blake Snell's the same way in Tampa Bay. If they're not going to be rewarded for doing well, then why would they sign with them? Why would a big-name pitcher or hitter, for that matter, want to sign with Colorado when they're not going to get credit for playing well? Why would Ottavino want to re-sign with the Rockies if he's not going to be selected to an All-Star game with a 1.7 ERA? He should go to a bigger market team where he'll get national media attention. And he'll get a pitch in big games, in playoff games, and be just as dominant as he was with the Rockies and maybe win a ring or make an All-Star team.
You're saying you can't win a ring with Colorado?
He very well could. But I'm saying you're going to get more media attention, more national games if you go to a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Cubs. And that's why those teams have the most success. It's no secret, I think. They can attract the big-name free agents. And it hurts some of the smaller market teams at times. Not to say smaller market teams can never win, because they obviously can and they obviously have throughout baseball history, but the window of contention when you're talking about that is much smaller for the small market teams. Look at the Kansas City Royals. They had 2 really good years where they won the American League pennant and won 1 World Series, and now they're one of the worst teams in baseball. And if you look at a team like the Yankees, even when they missed the playoffs, were somewhat competitive. Last year, by the way, for the Yankees was supposed to be a rebuilding year, and they made the playoffs. A rebuilding year for the Yankees and they make the playoffs. A rebuilding year for the Royals and they're the worst team in baseball. Do you see the difference here? Why stuff like this, why not getting picked to the All-Star game, why it might seem trivial and meaningless to some is such a big deal in the grand scheme of things?
Yes, I do.
I know you do, Van, but for the audience out there, I hope they understand this.
Yes. Do you have anything else to?
No, I'll hop off my soapbox now.
All right. I have a few more things on the list, but it looks like we are running out of time. We can cover them next week. Not a lot of breaking news, just other discussion topics. But the All-Star debate was good. So we will get back to you guys again next week at the same time, same place. You have been listening to Extra Innings on National Sports Radio.